This is Leafs Morning Take with Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill.
Now we've got a fight started here right off the bat with Rosehill.
30 minutes of live, non-stop Leafs talk starts now.
Buckle up for another crazy night in the NHL on the eve of American Thanksgiving. 15 games, 30 teams in action, including the Leafs in New Jersey to take on the red-hot New Jersey Devils. It's the Wednesday edition of Leafs Morning Take. Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill with you. What's going on, Rosie?
Not too much, dude. Flying home today, so just felt like flying out on the busiest day of American travel, so why not?
We were joking off air, like this has been the longest vacation of all time into California, but it ends today for Rosie. He'll be back in the saddle coming up tomorrow, but remember to subscribe, tap that like button, leave us a review. Don't forget to visit theleafsnation.com for the very latest on all things Toronto Maple Leafs. Thoughts, comments, concerns, questions. Drop us a line in the chat down below here on YouTube. We'll get to it later on. If you have a question as well for Frank Seravalli, who's coming up in about 15 minutes or so, bring it right now. Of course, the Leafs and big-time topic of conversation in the trade world in terms of the NHL because of the injury to Morgan Rielly. Dude, I can't believe it. Their projected D-Corps tonight, $7.1 million combined. Can you fathom that?
No, I've never even heard of anything that low. Like, I'd like to see the comparables, man. Like, that's half. I mean, it doesn't even look like it's half the Marlies, but it's just like, Jesus, man, we just can't afford this right now. Like, I don't know. I was crunching a couple numbers, and it's like since Samsonov got hurt 8 games ago, we've gotten 11 points out of 8 games. Not bad. I mean, we're hanging along here, grinding and pulling some points out. And, just when we feel like we're seeing some light, Rielly goes down, like kind of the last guy we need going down, especially on the back end. So I don't know, man, just another bit of a grind. Obviously, I think they'll be, we'll be grinding again into a little bit of December, it looks like. But, overall, when you look back at all this, I hope that, we keep doing what we're doing and chiseling some points out and getting out of the dark days and then, put the masks up and away we go in mid-December. That's the hope. But I mean, we've been sitting here for a while with a bunch of banged up players and it just doesn't stop.
It doesn't, and certainly every team goes through it, and we'll get to more of that coming up. Again, Frank Seravalli as well in about 12, 13 minutes from now. You do not want to miss that interview. We're going to get into the trade conversation for sure. But as you mentioned, it is American Thanksgiving coming up tomorrow, so I wanted to ask you this. What's holiday season like for a National Leaguer? Is American Thanksgiving big, even for a Canadian team? I know you played for a Canadian team and American teams too.
I remember nothing being big, man. It was just, they'll usually plan games on days when, what's convenient for the fans, right? Rightfully so. So as a player, you don't really get too many breaks. I remember having, you just run upstairs in your condo to somebody who's still around for the 1 or 2 days you get off to have Christmas and Thanksgiving dinner. But someone will throw on a turkey and, usually some of the wives get together and, plan whoever's still around, or usually no one leaves town, right? You don't have much time, or you're on the road yourself, but you'll find a day to shoot up to someone's condo or house and have a bit of a festivity. But it sure isn't like it is for everyone else at home when you're playing, and rightfully so, I guess.
It's tough to get gooned up too, right? Because I think you look at the schedule, and I can't remember when you played, like what, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago in terms of how different the schedule looks. But we're completely dark on American Thanksgiving tomorrow. But then there's a flurry of games. Like, I'm not sure if you've seen this yet, but the Leafs actually play at 2 Eastern time on Friday against the Minnesota Wild. So we're talking some Friday puck on Friday.
Yeah, that's definitely
Afternoon
weird for
puck.
them. Yeah, totally. It'll throw guys' routines off a little bit when some guys get really hooked into, I like to skate at this time, I like to eat at this time, I take a nap for this long at this time, then I go get my coffee, then I'm at the rink at this time. It's all blown up, right? And you're probably not eating chicken parm at 10:30 in the morning and everything's kind of thrown off a little bit. But honestly, I never minded that. I kind of hated the routine and the waiting around for the game. So whenever they threw a wrench into it, I just shrugged my shoulders and said, fuck it, I guess we just got to do whatever comes our way. And then all the kind of the prep is off you and you just go and take whatever comes to you. I like that a little bit better, but some guys definitely hate it.
You a big turkey guy?
Yeah, I think so. We fired one up at the hall we were Canadian at Thanksgiving. We fired one up and it was amazing. We were all saying, why don't we ever eat turkey besides twice a year? It's kind of weird. It's so good.
I'm the opposite, man. Maybe it's my Italian uproots, but I rather pasta or something else over turkey. Some other meat. I've never got down with it. I think it's really, really dry. Maybe my mother's just terrible at cooking it. I don't know. Probably not. Mom, if you're listening or watching, I'm kidding, but I don't know. I've just never been a fan of the turkey, and more so how fatigued you are with the tryptophan after, man. I could take like a 7-hour nap after eating turkey.
It is weird. It is really weird. And I doubt your mom's not good at cooking stuff. Being a good Italian woman, I'm sure she's great.
You are correct. Her cooking is phenomenal. It's number one, so I've made up for it for sure. But let's get over the boards, Rosie. Indisputably is the lead story here in this market. Morgan Rielly goes down, placed on LTIR during our show yesterday, which means he'll miss a minimum of 24 days, 10 games, a knee injury, as you predicted, Dr. Rosehill. So what now is my question. I mentioned the projected D Corps for tonight's game combined $7.1 million. They're up against it. They're going to be in one.
I guess Gio and Halsey are taking over those minutes. Not ideal.
Your boy Halsey.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about it. I mean, it's not. You got to have someone crunch a lot of big minutes right now, because that's what Rielly put up there, and now you got to replace it with whoever you can, and they'll try to mix it up and see who's going each night, I imagine, and just kind of fly by the seat of their pants that way, and try to fill holes where they can. But like we've said on this show, I mean, one or two of those little mistakes, costly out of position moments, getting a little caught behind with your gap and whatnot, or whatever it is, that can be the game, especially against the New Jersey Devils. You're not going to be able to give up many opportunities, and you're not going to get many. So it's scary to have a guy like that out of the lineup and still try to perform and outchance them and outscore them and shut them down is going to be very difficult. But stranger things have happened, and sometimes when your back's up against the wall, you just pull something out of your ass. And I mean, that's probably what the Leafs are planning on tonight.
Definitely, and I think you referenced it a bit there, and you see the potential lineup in front of you. But in the absence of Rielly, who needs to step up the most, in your opinion? My guy would be Rasmus Sandin. I think obviously he's going to see an uptick in minutes, but most specifically, he's going to be elevated to PP1 to play with the big boys. And I won't lie, there's been bits and pieces throughout this early season where I've wanted to see that anyway, and now he's going to get a shot. Are you curious with him? Who do you want to step up here in the absence of Rielly?
Yeah, I like what you're saying, Rasmus. I mean, he hasn't been playing up to, I think, his standards and his potential
Agreed.
since he came back. And maybe that's, it's tough to start off a season when you do the whole holdout thing and you miss some games and the team's going on without you with camp and everything. Maybe that plays a factor a little bit to a slow start, but would be really nice if he popped up and kind of showed out tonight. But same with Timothy Liljegren. I think that, obviously I don't think he's as highly touted as a player, but I think his ceiling is high as well, and he could step up and do some big things, play some big minutes, do some shutdown, get the puck moving forward quick with some confidence, and get the hell up in the play and see if he can make something happen and kind of cover both ends of the rink. Is a good opportunity for both of them, I think, to really stand up and say, hey, I can handle some more on my play right now. I'm ready.
It's just funny how it works out in the NHL world. So you lose your number one defenseman. In fact, Toronto will be without their top three highest paid defensemen, and you got to play the New Jersey Devils for the second time in 6 days. This Devils team is on complete fuego. We said this last Thursday when they beat Toronto 3-2. Yegor Sharagovich, of course, the OT winner on the gift wrap from Tavares and Marner, if you do remember that. And the Leafs don't win in OT, as we know. But they got really close to beating a team that just had an unbelievable start. They're 16-3. The Leafs 10-5-5. But it's just amazing how it works out that, the last team you want to play with a depleted back end, that's the one you get tonight.
Yeah, it's kind of like when it rains, it pours, right? But, we talk about it on our end many times about a sleeper game. These guys have been on this heater for a long time, and every day is kind of the same. Like, we got the streak going. It's going to break eventually. And, maybe they kind of take the Leafs for granted right now. Say, oh, we beat them when they were at their best at home, but they get all fired up to play in Toronto, and it's a big hockey night game or whatever it is. And this is a little bit more subdued. It's a Wednesday night game. They're depleted. They just beat them recently in memory. Maybe their minds just kind of nod on and they're thinking they're going to walk through this one. And the Leafs could potentially, really come together, like I said, with some adversity and just lay it all out there. And, all you can do is throw a flyer out there and see what you can do. And there's not a lot of pressure on the Maple Leafs to win this one. So it could go that way. It would be pretty awesome if it did, but that's a goddamn good hockey team over there.
And yeah, it is. It sure is. And you look at the spreads as well in PointsBet Canada. The favorite is the home team, and understandably so in the New Jersey Devils. Conversely, you look at last Thursday, the Leafs were heavily favored, and we talked about how curious that number was. But Toronto was good in that game. Do not forget that. But again, New Jersey's are 113 in a row. They haven't lost since October 24th. They just are so dynamic in the way they play the game, and I was really, really impressed when you look at last Thursday. Puck possession's a big thing, and you just can't make mistakes. So obviously that's going to be further amplified now without Rielly, that the attention to detail with the puck is going to be massive, Rosie.
Yeah, big time, man. It's just limiting mistakes is all it is. We see with some of these guys that we've talked about throughout the season when you have potential to win a game and it's just that one mistake and it's just that one ill-opportune time where you let a guy pass you or forget your assignment or whatever it is. And obviously it's defensemen that are usually doing that because defense is a tougher decision or a tougher position, and you're obviously put in positions where when it gets by you, there's only one line left, and even more so the goaltenders that way as well, being the last line of defense. So mistakes are definitely amplified and on the back end, and they're going to be so even more right now when they're depleted. But at the end of the day, these guys are all National Hockey League players for the most part, and I think they can just come together and keep things to the outside, keep it very simple, and keep mistakes to an absolute minimum has got to be what keeps preaching right now.
Yeah, certainly. And again, I think you have to have a bit of confidence in the way you played last Thursday against this team. Like, let's not forget, they were pretty damn close to dethroning New Jersey. And last time I checked, the Devils are going to lose eventually. But like, to your theory about them having one of those games where just nothing clicks, I've been waiting and betting against New Jersey in game, out of game, pre-game, every game, and they still win, and they win, and they win, and they win. Like, to me, outside of the personal story of Erik Karlsson, this has been the most improbable start to this season for the New Jersey Devils. In my wildest dreams, I could never have projected this, man. Like, they've been outstanding. Jack Hughes has been incredible. Jesper Bratt, Dougie Hamilton's had a really, really consistent start. And you look at Vitek Vanacek, like, you can tie in the Leafs conversation too, where the fact that the Capitals let go of both their goalies from last season, and guys to a degree are having success. And Elias Samsonov banged up right now, but he was really good before the injury. And then you look at Vanacek and the 9-1-0 record through 10 appearances, man. Like, everything has gone right for New Jersey, but you start to wonder if they're peaking too early here.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned their players and everything. They got some high-end players and stuff, but it's not like one of those just ridiculous things where one line is so hot or a goalie is just shutting down the whole world and getting shutouts, and save percentage and everything is through the roof, and they just keep ticking along with these crazy wins. It's going to kind of fall. They're kind of like just a well-rounded team. Like what's continued them 13 games in a row? They're obviously doing something in that locker room, chemistry-wise, and the way everyone's clicking, and a total understanding of everyone's roles on the team and assignments, and they're going really good. But like you say, it is a bit of a bubble. I mean, I don't think they're so good that they're just going to set records or anything like that. They're just on an absolute heater, and I think that's just a great thing. Like I said, it's not just some fly-by-night thing that's winning them all these games. They're doing it together, which is a good sign down the road. It will end eventually, but man, it looks like they've kind of found that magic formula of, chemistry and finding a team that clicks together, because that's exactly what they're doing right now.
Yeah, they've been money in the bank. There's no doubt about that. Again, Frank Seravalli will drop on in about 3 or 4 minutes from now. But the lineup news and the lineup information. Nick Robertson expected to come back for the Leafs in this game. He's been a health bomb, eating the popcorn in the press box for the last 4. What do you make of that decision? And clearly, I think we're seeing what the Leafs view Robertson as, and that's a top 6 player. When he's not playing, it's not going to be in a bottom 6 role. So you see there with Tavares and Marner and the potential of that line catching fire tonight.
Yeah, I see that too. I mean, I've liked Robertson when he's in. I think he's got big potential, but I think they're just kind of being, taking it easy on him. Like you said, they're not going to throw him down to a bottom six role. He's not that player. So they're not going to, they'd prefer taking him out of the lineup than putting him down there, just like you said. And that says to me
Yeah.
that they're not trying to jumble this guy up or you can ruin a player by shoving him in positions he's not used to, shoving him in positions he doesn't belong. When you start panicking and making roster decisions because you're up against a wall with injuries, you can kind of bugger a guy up. You can do that with a young player and give him too much on his lap too early. And I think they're just doing that, but he definitely is a type of player that can play with those guys. And with how hot, Johnny T is right now and Marner, I think he's definitely the guy to go up there and sit beside him on this opportunity and see what he can get done. And he showed it before, and hopefully he's not dejected by having a couple nights in the press box. Geez, he's young and he's good and let go, right?
I actually don't mind this look tonight. So as you see, Dennis Malgin's going to come out. That means Kerfoot to the third line. I think Holmberg and Kelly Arncroke have looked good the past couple games. I was mentioning on yesterday's broadcast how I really like what the bottom six brought to the table the other night in that loss to the New York Islanders, and I think Kerfoot just adding depth in terms of a guy who can actually provide offense and be a threat at the very least in the bottom six. And I like his Swiss Army nature, the fact that he can play in the third line, the fourth line, the first line, the second line. It really doesn't matter in all facets of the game for Alex Kerfoot. So I think it provides a different look. And it provides John Tavares with another sniper on his wing, right? You have a guy like Marner who can do his thing on the other side. You have Robertson who's got a lethal release. I think it puts John Tavares in a really, really good position to succeed, which only helps because that duo I think has looked really, really good, all things considered, since they were reunited, I should say, and put together again by Sheldon Keefe. So I don't mind it, and I think they have to find a way. To me, it's paramount they find a way to get Robertson going here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, look at the top six and forget about everything else. I mean, whoa, there's some hockey players on those two lines, and a lot of them are firing right now. So, what a great opportunity for, say, Austin Matthews to do one of his Austin Matthews things and just take over a game where he just has 4 points and see you later, right? And then everyone else chips in and closes things off on the back end, and away you go. You get one of the biggest wins of the year, and I think that's very possible just with the firepower that they still have on their top six. But like you alluded to, some of these guys can play with anybody, and they have this year, and they've still contributed and produced. So good time for that to happen. But as we all know, that just pure firepower is not going to win games. I think the Leafs have learned that, and they know that now, and they're not relying on that. But now that they're pushed in this position, it'd be a nice time for those guys to kind of take off and just try it anyways, right?
And from a matchup standpoint, too, I think you look at New Jersey, and that's the one thing that sticks out for a lot of people early on in this season is the uncanny depth, right? You look at what they provide on the fourth line, the third line, and certainly the top six. And I think every team tries to mirror that around the league. And again, I just think it adds a lot more depth having a guy like Robertson in the top six. But again, ultimately, it's going to come down to him and the staying power, right? Like how many times already in this early season have we talked about Robertson ready to take that next step? And it's like he takes one step forward and two steps back. And again, you can get drawn into the conversation about the coaching staff, the team, how they feel about him. Are they not giving him enough confidence, enough leash, enough leeway? Like he seems to be the guy that is picked on the most when this team is struggling, is he not?
Yeah, and that's kind of annoying because like we go back to camp when he had such a great camp and such a great preseason, came in, had that big OT winner as well once he gets called back up, which was kind of rightfully his spot if it weren't for cap issues. And I think you look at it with a magnifying glass, you can find that stuff. But I mean, if he's on the Dallas Stars just quietly doing his thing and you're waiting for him to have his big game and you're like, oh yeah, that Robertson's pretty good. Hey, like you look at it so closely with a fine tooth comb that you're going to start to see this and that. But at the end of the day, he's been pulled out of the lineup when they need it because of those reasons that you alluded to. He is a top six guy. He's not going to get jumbled in down there playing with different guys. It's just not his spot. And, I don't think he's done anything wrong. He's a young player still breaking into the league with a handful of games, and he's contributed and made an impact in many of them. So, I mean, everything's going right, for Nick Robertson right now. And, he's got to bide his time and wait for opportunities to do his thing. It's not breaking into this league. And, here's one in front of him right now tonight. He's got an opportunity to play with these two guys. So I think everything's going status quo, and whatever, you go on Twitter and people are ripping this guy and that guy, whatever, throw him out against the wall and see what sticks. But at the end of the day, he's doing just fine. He's right where he should be, a young player with, potential, and he's getting opportunity in the right ways. I think they're managing him just fine.
For sure. And it's a big time moment again for the Maple Leafs. But to a point you made earlier, and Frank Seravalli is coming up. Austin Matthews, I still think, it's crazy to suggest because he's got 9 goals on the season, but I think we're still waiting for that signature Austin Matthews game where he erupts for like 2, 3, 4 goals, right? And we haven't got it yet, but maybe New Jersey's a perfect opponent for that.
Yeah, you hope so. Like, we said that there's going to be tough sledding here, and there's not a lot of expectation, and it's not a big must-win game by any stretch. And their backs against the wall, so it'd be a great time for him just to say, "Oh yeah, remember me," and away he goes. But I agree with you. Since game number one, we've been kind of trying to wait for him to just be that explosive superstar, and I'm not dogging him. He's been just fine. Like you say, he's been scoring, he's got points and stuff, but there hasn't just been like that, hi, remember I'm better than everybody else at hockey type of moment for him, and he's very capable of doing that. So it would be a wicked time to do it against the Devils tonight, absolutely.
Perhaps it was an unrealistic expectation for a guy who had, 60 goals in 73 games last year to expect that every year. But certainly, I think he is missing that extra step, the extra step that we've seen in recent memory, right, with Matthews. But the fortunate thing is he always has the ability to turn things on, and he hasn't been that bad. You just haven't noticed him as much as, say, like a Mitch Marner who enters a game on a 13-game point streak, or specifically a John Tavares who's just been outstanding early on through the 20-game mark of this season.
Yeah, like, I mean, you got the Austin Matthews with the 60 goals last year, and I got caught up in that too. Like, how many will he get this year? It's like, well, who knows, right? It's not, you got a lot of things got to go right for you to put up 60 and have that magical year. That could be a career year for absolutely anybody. But you look at Marner, you look at Tavares, you look at Nylander. These guys are kind of all been producing, it seems like, more than him. You notice them in a game more. You notice them on the highlights. You notice them in the big moments and stuff than Austin. And he's been an absolutely, and he's an asset. But yeah, I agree. He hasn't done that big, I'm the big boy on this team moment by any stretch. A lot of the other guys have, thankfully. That's great. That's what you need. But, and like you say, you don't want him to peak too early. Maybe he just doesn't have the greatest preseason ever, and then he goes and lights the tits off the whole league all playoffs long. I mean, would we take that? What do you think, right?
Yeah, my substitute would be like Matthews pounding his chest in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I'll gladly take that for 40 goals. How about that? Let's get to today's guests from Daily Faceoff, the insiders of NHL Insiders. It is Frank Seravalli. Frank, a happy early Thanksgiving to you. I know you're going to have a great time over the next couple days, but what's the latest? Do you expect the Leafs to make a move here?
I do. Look, they're in a spot that you take a look at their top 6 defensemen at this point in this exact moment in time. I thought when Jake Muzzin went down, it necessitated a move. And now with Morgan Rielly out for the next while, that I think there's certainly it's only heightened that need. Look, Mac Hollowell doesn't even have a graphic on Daily Faceoff. I mean, come on.
That's what I noticed.
That's telling in and of itself. We've got graphics for everyone. So for me, I look at this group and look, as much as Mark Giordano is excited to play more minutes, and you're going to get to see more from Rasmus Sandin and Tim Liljegren, I think they're in a spot where the only question is when and how big of a swing do they take. It's not if.
So what are you hearing in terms of names on that front? And I know, it's a great point, right? Because they have to sort of protect the Rielly cap hit and all of that for when he comes back. And there's other things, including the contract situation with 50 in and 50 out, certainly. But what kind of names are you hearing? Like, is it going to be the rental market, or are they pretty much interested in anything right now?
I think they have to be open to anything. And I think a really good starting point is the list that I put out last week, 6 potential fits to replace Jake Muzzin, because a lot of that list, in fact, all of it still applies today with Rielly being out. So you have to account, of course, for the fact, as you mentioned, that they're expecting Rielly back sometime in 2023. You have to account for the idea that, maybe there's the contract issue. Although I don't ever see that as big of a hurdle. You can always dump someone somewhere for future considerations to a team who's willing to do you a favor, just to will out of that issue if it really push comes to shove. But the thing for me is it a temporary stopgap solution, a warm body that you can put in your lineup now for the next number of weeks? That's nice playoff insurance. Or is it more than that? Is it a big swing, someone like a John Klingberg on the rental market, or someone with term like a Matt Roy in Los Angeles? So there's a number of different options, but I think reading the market, Nick, to me, one of the biggest things that I've learned is there's so few guys that are out there that have term that teams are willing to move on from. It's a really scarce list. And as much as the Leafs would probably prefer to have a non-rental, of have a player with term, that they may have to adjust their thinking process here and move forward in a different direction.
Rosie, this is your
What
time
else,
to
Frank?
shine.
Frank, what do you see as say they don't get that rental guy and they get a guy with term who's got the potential to actually make a difference in this Leafs lineup going forward, and like kind of like a permanent stay, like what the fans are saying, we need this guy. What do you see as them giving up to get that if it becomes available?
It depends on who it is, right? Like, so you see Matt Roy, that's he's the only guy on this list that actually has term. I know it says here that he's a pending UFA. He's not. But it depends on which way you want to go. And so I did Toronto radio yesterday, Fan 590, and Ben Ennis was the host, and he asked me, what do you think about the idea of the Leafs going after Erik Karlsson? And I immediately dismissed it out of hand, but it's actually going to be a talking point on Daily Faceoff Live today, because I think you actually have to take a step back and consider all of the different options that might be on the table. At first glance, I was like, this is a really complicated transaction. There's so many moving parts to this. He has an $11.5 million cap hit. And for a team that already has 3 8-figure cap hits, that's almost exactly the last thing that the Toronto Maple Leafs need. But I think you could actually make an interesting argument now that I've taken a step back and internalized the question a bit, and say that it makes more sense for Toronto Maple Leafs and their future to go after a player like that at full cap hit and not have to give any of your future up, meaning the assets that you might trade to get one of these rental players, to get a John Klingberg, to get someone else, and keep those players, whether it's the first round pick and Matthew Nyes or Nick Robertson, whoever it might be, so that you have players that are contributing to your team in the future on entry-level contracts. If you're going to be taking on a burden like that in Erik Karlsson, who is so elite, who has the connection in their front office with Jason Spezza, it sounds utterly outrageous and outlandish until you take a step back to really kind of consider the big picture. I think it's very unlikely still, but I think if the Leafs, you got to put every single option on the table and at least work your way through it.
Yeah, at very least, I think they're going to sniff around, clearly, Frank, in this conversation. But to get, you must give, as you referenced. Nick Robertson's had a turbulent start to this season, to say the least. To the best of your knowledge, is he an untouchable still for this team?
No, I do not believe so. I think the list of untouchables is very small. I think last year it was Matthew Nyes. I think given where they're at, given the expectations, given the fact that this team is squarely in that competitive cycle to win, I think even you'd have to consider Matthew Nyes in the right deal as well. That I think sometimes you get to a spot where you begin to overrate and get infatuated with some of the players that you have in your organization. And I just don't think the Leafs are in a spot where they can dismiss anything out of hand, including their prospects, given where they are, that whatever comes down the pike, you'd have to at least think about it.
Frank, excellent stuff, and we look forward to Daily Faceoff Live today. Appreciate this.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Frank.
Happy Thanksgiving. There you have his Frank Seravalli, of course, of Daily Faceoff Live. That's coming up, and that's interesting, man. That is interesting, Erik Karlsson. But certainly, I think you look at these type of defensemen, and especially that contract that accompanies him. I think that's just going to be a really, really difficult move to make. But I think if you're Toronto, at the very least, you have to make a call. But I've just been in the community that you're paying the big for that money. It's just going to be tough to do anything, Rosie.
Yeah, big time. I mean, that's the problem, that this is only going to get worse with this team too. Come down the summer of 2023 here. Can you imagine they have Erik Karlsson on their cap as well? Like they'd have to move something big around and make a big change and get rid of like one of those contracts or one of those talents and see what they can get back and try to minimize the damage as much as possible and maximize your team. But ultimately they're kind of going for it right now. Like that's why I think Frank says nothing's off the table, because they're not rebuilding. They're not it's go time. Like your contracts, you got your big boys set and they're playing well, and you got a couple pieces you need to fine tune, and it is on the back end. Get something done and try to win, and don't bet the farm doing it, which I don't think they need to. But there's going to be a rebuilding process after all these contracts can't fit in the cap anymore, and then you're going to be there for a while. So make hay while the sun shines, and that's this year, right?
You're bang on, my man. The meantime, the wrap up is brought to you by our friends at PointsBet Canada. There it is. There it is. So my boy, I was texting you last night about my boy Tage Thompson. I don't know if you caught the entire scoreline, but he had himself a night of 4.8 night, a goal and 3 apples and a billion shots on goal. So yes, we covered yesterday, Rosie. We're going to try to stay hot tonight. In general, my philosophy around American Thanksgiving is take the over, and I'm going to stick with that theory tonight. Give me the over 6.5 between the Leafs and the New Jersey Devils. I think most specifically, the only way Toronto can win tonight, especially knowing what we know about their back end, is to play that barn burner run and gun type style. That's the only way you're beating the Devils, in my opinion. So I like the over 6.5. And I think both teams might be loose in this game, considering what's ahead and all the turkey ahead, too.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, wow, the Thanksgiving over. I think those boys might get some turkey and be toast. But like you say, they need to play that sling game tonight, where their big boys got to score a lot of goals to beat this team, and it's gonna be something like that where it's just a barn burner. So I don't mind it at all. And yeah, if it does turn out to be 7-4 game, whatever you want to call it, 5. Who knows? They could shoot the lights out, right? So that would be an exciting game. I hope that it happens, man, but it's going to be a tough one. But for once, it's a Leafs game without a ton of pressure, and it doesn't feel like a must win. So that's got to be a different look for the boys.
Yeah, I know. They're the underdog, which is a good role to be in the NHL. And as we talk about through the broadcast throughout this year, Toronto's always the definitive favorite. So it's like a role reversal tonight where everybody's expecting New Jersey to win. And maybe it's the Leafs who walk away with 2 points. So we get set for that one. Are you a big football guy?
A little bit. I've gotten into the last three years or so, and just started fantasy this year. So I'm in it a little bit.
Okay, so you can talk to your buddies. I think tomorrow's mission for you, I'm going to give you the rights to the PointsBet Canada bet of the day, because there's no hockey. You know, I'm prolific in hockey and not much more anywhere else. So as you know, there's some football games on tomorrow. You know, I won't be watching. So you're going to make the pick tomorrow. Okay. Can you handle that?
Cool. I got her.
So
excited.
Yeah, just think of maybe the latest game in the schedule, because again, we go at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So if you can do that, that'd be fantastic. Okay.
Right on, dude. I need a winner. I got to start off hot.
Anything you want. And if you win that one, then you'll keep rolling. Okay.
Beautiful. I've been waiting
There you
for a
have it.
while for this opportunity.
Dude, I've been winning too much. Been winning everybody too much money. That's the problem. Rosie, excellent job. Safe travels home, and we'll talk tomorrow. Okay.
On, dude.
There you have it. Rosie's 1 week extravaganza in California is now complete. Headed back home to Alberta, and that's what we'll talk tomorrow. The Leafs and Devils tonight at the Prudential Center at the Rock. It's going to be something special. And American Thanksgiving coming up tomorrow. Take care.